Hi, Stephen Travis here. I want to talk about 3 tips for beginner artists. The first tip for those just beginning is to be focused. We can't do everything at once. We certainly can't do everything well at once. And in art, the possibilities are really quite endless. There are so many choices, it can be quite overwhelming, particularly at the start. And especially if we love many areas of art, we may have really enjoyed a wide range of things. Maybe I love charcoal portraiture. Maybe I love delicate watercolor landscapes. Maybe I love incredibly strong, abstract, expressionistic, mixed media artworks. Maybe I love digital anime work. Maybe I love thick textured oil paint that's lathered on with a palette knife that's so textured, you can feel it with your fingers more than even see it with your eyes. Maybe there's other things. Maybe it's sculpture. There's such a wide range of artworks that we can have really enjoyed and can have all inspired us, and we want to do them all. But at the beginning of our art journey, I think it is really helpful if we focus, because we can't practice everything at once. And it's helpful to choose an area to focus on. And I think there's 2 things that perhaps it's helpful to focus on. The first area of focus is the art media that we want to use in our art production. What art materials do I want to work with? We only have to walk into an art supply store to see the overwhelming choice. There's just so many things, and they all look amazing, and they're all very expensive. Usually, that we need to limit. We need to limit what we're going to use. So I've got a few practical questions just to consider if you're starting off on your art journey, perhaps before you commit to what media you will use and how much you'll buy. Firstly is really consider how much you want to spend, because if you haven't tried to buy art materials before, you're probably going to be in for a shock how expensive a lot of things are. That's not to say everything's expensive, and there often is a cheaper product and a more expensive product, but you can spend a lot of money very quickly in an art supply shop. And so obviously pencil and paper is a lot cheaper than oil paint and canvas. Now, there are really expensive papers that are more expensive than cheap canvases, but generally artworks on paper, with pencil or with ink, with charcoal, with pastel, these media will be cheaper than your paint media. So there's a consideration. So have a look at the range of things and find something that you really can afford to do. And also remember that artworks such as watercolors generally need to be framed if we're going to display them. And so that adds to the expense. So think about those things when you look at what you'll choose to use. What's your budget, so that you don't have that pressure all the time. Secondly, how much space do you have to do your artworks? Because again, working with paper and pencil might just need the corner of a table, or maybe even I can do it on my lap if it's a small sheet of paper, just leaning on a book. But if I want to paint a large canvas with oil paints, I'm going to need space for perhaps a 6-foot, 1.5 meter wide canvas that might take a couple of weeks to dry. I'll need a lot more space. That needs space to walk around it, so that I'm not bumping it. So again, the space I've got to work with and to store my equipment and to have my equipment out if I'm doing something that I can't finish in one go and I have to leave it out, that may also, just from a practical consideration, affect what medium I choose to use. And finally, how much time do I have to devote to my art? And again, I have to be practical of what my other commitments are: family commitments, study commitments, work commitments, all of those things, other things I just have to do or like to do. So if I'm going to draw with pen and paper, again, I can produce a nice little artwork in 15 minutes. But if I'm going to do oil painting, I'm not even really going to have got set up in 15 minutes. And I certainly probably won't have cleaned up in that time, depending what I've done. So what's my time commitment? I don't want to do something that ends up taking too much time to get set up or to pack up, that then discourages me from feeling that I can do it, because I do want to be able to do it with some regularity, whatever it is. Okay, so how much do I have to spend? How much space do I have to do it in? And how much time do I have? So choose an art medium that fits in with those things. The second area to focus on is not what I'm going to use, but what am I actually going to produce? What am I going to draw? What subjects am I going to use in my art? Because every subject area has its own challenges that we will each grow to hate. You know, whether it's doing the hair on portraits, whether it's doing the leaves on trees in landscapes, or if I do buildings, whether it's perspective, or if I'm doing a lot of figures, whether it's trying to get the poses right or do hands, whatever. So drawing lots of architectural scenes will help me with my perspective, but it's not going to help me if I'm doing digital anime art. So there won't be immediate kind of crossover and improvement. I don't want to spread myself too widely by doing too many different subjects, because for every area of art, every subject area, there are challenges that I will need to focus on. So how do I choose what to focus on? Well, I think the obvious thing is, what do I enjoy looking at? Because I'll be spending a lot of time with my subjects as I draw. So I want to be able to enjoy them. I have a daughter who loves people, absolutely loves people, loves everything about people. And it's no surprise that her favorite art area is portraiture, because that reflects what she enjoys most. So enjoying what we're drawing, what we're looking at as we draw, as we paint, whatever we're doing, will help give us the energy that I'm going to need when it becomes hard work. And every artwork at some point is hard work, and there are things we have to push through at some time. So need to focus on choosing our art materials, focus on choosing our art subjects. My second point is to start simple. I will improve with practice and get better, and I will produce artworks in the future that I can't produce at the start. And I look back at my own art practice and my drawings particularly, and I can see that. I can do subjects now that I used to avoid at the start because they were too hard and I thought I couldn't do them. But if I were learning the piano now, I wouldn't start with a Beethoven concerto, because that's way too hard. When my children started to learn the piano, they started with pieces that were called things like Jumping Frogs, and that's what they sounded like. An over-ambitious piece too early is simply discouraging. And it makes the person think that they can't do it, when in fact it was just too advanced for them. And learning art, I don't think, is really any different to learning music in that sense. Starting with simple things is a big help, because it gives me fewer things to have to think about and fewer things to have to work on. So I have more energy and focus for those few things, so I will improve at them more rapidly. And learning a few skills really well is a much stronger foundation in my art practice and my art development than learning to do a lot of things not very well at all. That's really important, so I'm going to say that again. It's more helpful to do a really good job with a simple subject than a poor job with a much more complex subject. Okay. For example, in my own area of architectural landscapes, I see over and over again drawings where the artist has clearly either not understood or not mastered perspective really well, and yet they've drawn this incredibly complicated architectural scene that clearly they put a huge amount of effort and time into doing. And it just seems a real shame, because it's just been a bit too ambitious for where their skill levels were at. You see, if I'm still learning perspective, it's going to be much easier to learn it if I use a simple perspective and I have a simple building shape, because then everything will be more obvious and easier to see whether I got it right or wrong. And once I've got it right with a simple perspective and a simple building shape, it's easier then to move to a more complex perspective and a more ornate, complex architectural structure. Okay, now it's not just with the subjects that we need to keep it simple, but it's also with our materials. When I first started painting, because I started with paint, and I bought had lots and lots of oil paints, lots of different tubes of color. If I saw them cheap, I would buy them if I knew that they were a good brand. I had all these tubes of paint. Very quickly, I learned it was much better to just restrict myself to a very small number of paints, maybe 12. I probably used about a dozen different colors. And I found that with that limited choice, I was far better able to learn how to combine colors, how to mix colors, working out things with tone and with warm colors and cool colors and all these color theory things. Far easier to piece it all together with a smaller number of tubes of paint to have to juggle and think about it. It was easier to see what was happening and to remember it. And I found once I got it really clear with these dozen colors, it was very easy to add any color in. But if I'd started with the 100 different colors that I had, I'd still be trying to work out what was what. It would just have been too complex and too overwhelming. So it can be helpful to start with a very small number of materials and really master those. So at the start, keep it simple. The third point is keep it small. Now, I started art just over 10 years ago, and although possibly most people know me for my architectural drawings, in fact, I started with very large oil paintings of Australian gum trees, Australian eucalypts. This is the sort of art I produced, but being so large, every painting took a long time, a lot of paint, and often at the end I'd look at it and I think, oh, I really wish I'd done this brighter or lighter or used stronger tonal contrast here. And I finished up with a big painting that I wasn't happy with, and yet I'd spent so much time on it already, I couldn't bear the thought of spending any more time. I was frustrated because I wanted to take greater risks with colour and be bolder with tone, but it was just hard to take the risks when the paintings were so large and I'd put so much already into it. So one day I got the idea to paint a lot of really small paintings. Really small, 30 or even 20 centimetre square canvases. Cheaper, faster. It was easier psychologically, if I wasn't happy with something, to try something new or risky. And if it didn't work, I could quickly and easily paint over the small canvas and redo it and see how it looked darker or lighter, or with something left out or added in. Each painting became like an art lesson, and yet because the paintings were quicker to do, it was like the lessons became quicker and quicker. I got through them far more easily, far more quickly, and it was like I finished the course much faster and learned all the things I needed to learn. So, at the start, keep it small and gain experience more quickly and become more encouraged at the better results that can achieve. So that's it. If I'm just beginning in my art practice, I believe it's helpful if I can stay focused on what art materials I'm going to use and what art subjects I'm going to develop, and keep those fairly narrow. I think it's helpful to start simple, because doing well at what we're doing is the best foundation for then going further, and to start small because it helps us learn lessons more quickly and progress more rapidly, which is always encouraging. But hey, if other things work better for you, that's great. But personally, I found these things really good. So I hope for some of you at least it's helpful. If you've got other thoughts, other tips of things that worked really well for you when you were just beginning, especially if you've been doing it for a while now and you look back and think that was a great thing, please put it in the comment and share it with everybody else. That would be great. If you found this helpful, please hit like. If you'd like to hear more, hit subscribe. And thank you for joining me. See you next time.